Today, we have a special guest here. He's actually one of the newest members of Hoonigan, and he's brought in a special car, which is the Eneos Oil Hoonigan RSRX. This is where I should show it to you, right? Well, Steve, thank you very much for coming out today.
Good seeing you, man.
And welcome to the team. I know you've been here for a few months now, but it still feels kind of new. Before we even get into this, which is awesome, why don't you give us a quick background on who you are, what you've done, and why you matter?
Rallycross now, we've been doing this for a while. I started off back in, with this team, it was 2015. Eneos Oil was a partner of ours back then. Been through all sorts of changes in the sport. Now we're here at the new series, ARX. We got Eneos Oil with us again with the new Ford Focus RSRX, part of the Hoonigan family, and we're doing big things this year. It's pretty exciting.
I'm going to step you back even further than Rallycross, because I know that you actually started doing that roundy-round stuff. So you were a NASCAR guy, which is weird because you're Canadian, but give us a little background as far back as that.
Oh God, we did the NASCAR thing back from 2009, 10, 11, 12, a little bit of 13. Had a blast, drove for Dale Jr., teammates with Danica Patrick.
Man.
I guess Danica was a lot better looking or something, because when she decided to come full-time, I had to go look for another job. So,
and here you are in the wonderful world of Rallycross.
And here we are. So this is our new Eneos Oil Ford Focus RSRX. It's a whole new deal for me. It's a bigger car. The motor in this thing is absolutely unbelievable. And
it's one thing that Ken has said. He's like,
it's so drivable.
It's just such an amazing engine.
It's so
much better than the previous. Yeah. All right, so before we get inside of it, let's talk about outside and everything there.
Pretty much this whole car is all carbon on the outside. The only thing that's steel is the roof and the driver's door. Everything else on this thing is all carbon. It's got a little bit of a Kevlar mix to it to give it a little bit of strength, and so it doesn't just basically shatter when we hit things. We hit things a lot with these things. This entire car weighs 1,300 kilos, soaking wet with me in it after the race. That's the rules. We need to put a whole bunch of weight in it in special places just to get the handling right to achieve that. It is the most badass piece of equipment I've ever got to drive in my life.
What other cars did you drive before this in Rallycross? Was it always Fiesta?
All I've ever driven in rally is the Fiesta.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things I'm struggling with this year is my Fiesta. It was so nimble, it was so short. And we were on a radial tire back then too, so when I turned that wheel, that thing would just go like a go-kart. These things, and Ken's helped me a lot. It's been awesome teaming up with him, because being back on the bias ply tire and with a bigger car, you have to start everything so much earlier. Like, it just seems like it's a little bit more lazy, but then once you get it turning, it's a rocket ship.
Explain who built the car, kind of the background of the car.
Ford and M Sport teamed up, did a whole bunch of the design on this thing. They raced it in the WRX side with Backroot and block for the last couple of years. It's a full 100% purpose-built Rallycross car. Everything in this thing serves a purpose for Rallycross. Full independent front and rear suspension, double A-arm suspension, both front and back. It's a wild piece of equipment.
Obviously, I mean, I think the number one thing that stands out on this thing is just these massive flares, both front and rear. This thing has to be, it's like almost 6.5 inches wider than a regular Fiesta.
As crazy as it seems though, this stuff actually serves a purpose. Like, first off, it looks badass, right?
Yep.
Like, this just looks cool. It's the meanest looking Focus you'll see. Like, these things accelerate so fast, 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds, right? So the aerodynamic side of this, it helps a bunch. We have a lot of stuff we do under the car for aero.
So you're telling everyone at home this isn't just like a Rocket Bunny kit, like this actually has aerodynamics to it.
Absolutely. You knock off a front fender, you knock off a nose, this thing's not going to turn near as good as it would with all the bodywork on it. Downforce is a big thing with these things. We can change the handling of the car and make it a perfect handling car, and then make it either tight or loose just with aero changes.
So while we're talking about aero, let's talk about this rear wing. I love this thing. Just so much carbon and engineering.
It's amazing what this thing does. It's amazing the downforce this thing puts on the back of the car.
Do you know why they do the side slats as well as this?
Side force.
Yeah.
Side force is a big deal. Honestly, I learned that's why you see everything's kind of squared off here. The more side force we can get, the better on these things. Especially in the car, when you get in a high-speed corner, you get into the corner, it'll kind of get loose on you, and then once it gets yawed out a certain amount, you can feel the air catch the thing. It's like a little cushion. You can kind of lean on that and drive right through it.
By the way, I love that you have Dometic as a sponsor. For those of you into overlanding, you recognize that name because they make refrigerators. They also do stuff for like RVs. So you have like a slide-out fridge in here. That's.
It's a new partnership. We're definitely working on getting a slide-out fridge. It gets hot in these things. So, but yeah, that's a cool deal we're doing. Partnered up with Eneos and KOA Care Camps, and we're really putting an effort together to send as many kids with cancer to camp. So that's an awesome partnership. We're really looking forward to building that over the next year or so.
That's one of the things we love about Steve. He's actually like a good person. Unlike us scumbags, like he actually does nice things for people. Rear mount radiator. Let's get into this right here. I've called out the entire drifting community because everybody now just puts a rear mount in, and arguably, I don't think it's the most efficient way to have a radiator, but on Rallycross it makes a lot of sense, and you can explain to everybody why.
We got the intercooler up front, but we push these things to such extreme limits that cooling's one of the biggest challenges we have. You see the big scoops on the side, the big ducts, it's all carbon work. You see all the duct work getting in here. It's the most efficient PWR radiators that money can buy. It's the same stuff they use in Formula One and IndyCar and NASCAR, all that stuff.
I've looked at this car a lot. I just realized that even the fake taillight housings are made of carbon.
Everything is carbon on this thing. And we just smash it all the time.
So why a rear mount radiator for Rallycross?
The biggest thing is packaging. One of the biggest struggles we have with these things is it's a small car, right? Rallycross, so you want these cars as small and as nimble as possible. And there's really, we'll get under the hood here in a little bit, you'll see up there, there's not a whole bunch of room for getting a radiator up there as well. And the other side of it is that it's a contact sport. There's a lot of carnage that happens. It's a big area of risk up front, we'll put it that way. So
I'd also imagine airflow has a lot to do with it as well, because you're following behind people, dirt getting kicked up on the radiators, and you're also just so close. I mean,
absolutely.
I've watched you take laps where you're 4 inches behind somebody the entire race.
Yeah, like I said, it's a contact sport, right? We had a little bit of carnage back here.
I like that they added,
Shaggy puts a Band-Aid on.
Band-Aid on there.
This is where I got the wall, but you can see it was just a nice little kiss, right? Just a scuff there. Ken got the wall. He always does things bigger and better, right?
Let's get inside. Let's see what your office looks like in here. So
this steering wheel
through the mailbox window.
This steering wheel is the sexiest piece of this whole car.
All right, quickly explain what everything does.
I don't know.
So that's obviously launch control.
I don't have a clue.
I would love to know what the Hoon button does. I don't think I've ever even seen that before. Ooh, it wipes for you? That's nice. It's like a bidet.
It's like a bidet.
Yeah, I like that.
We'll start with ALS. We'll get into that after we get the hood up. This, we have 1 through 8 on here as far as ALS settings, anti-lag settings. So when we get to the line, you'll see, if you see an in-car video, you'll see us going through RPM control, ALS control. This sets what level of ALS we want. The RPM control.
By the way, for everybody at home, ALS is
anti-lag system. RPM, when we put it in launch mode, we're sitting there in line, all the pop and banging you hear before we take off. This is basically what controls what RPM it's held at when I go to wide open throttle. So if we pull up to the grid and we're in a bad lane, right? We got dirt on the track, it's a little bit wet. We can turn it down to have a little bit less wheel spin, turn it up to have a little bit more. It's so competitive now. So it's really important that we get that right. Radio button to talk to my guys. It's typically me whining and complaining when I push that button.
Yeah, no, I've heard your in-car. Yeah, it's pathetic.
Wipers, wash, and that's about it.
Here, why don't you get in and explain all this from inside? So you're not looking at much in here.
No.
It's pretty simple.
So that's our dash
that's
down
really
here.
kind of like...
That's what we got this page button for here, right? So we can go through all the different pages. Gives us all the different screens we need to go through. It tells me about oil temperature, water temperature, basically what calibration I'm on, so I can just look at this really quick instead of having to look at the wheel.
Nice little pedal box down here. I don't know why I love pedal boxes. It's like, it says race car.
So
take it that
shift lights up here, so that'll just come on every time we shift. The crazy part with this thing, Ford did such a good job with the engine in this thing. It's got such a wide power band. You naturally want a short shift because it just from an RPM standpoint. So we got the shift lights in there as kind of like an idiot-proof thing for us while we're racing.
Let's look under the hood.
This is the part that gets exciting with these things.
It's like any other modern car. You take the hood off and there's just a bunch of things in the way and you can't see the engine. Except this stuff looks a lot cooler than a trim plate. Damn.
Carbon fiber intake on the thing.
What angle is that engine at? It's
35 degrees rolled back.
Wow. So it just seems like it's such a severe angle.
Our Fiestas were 25.
Like my Audi sits almost like that, but I think it's probably like 20.
Look at the turbo. It's way back down under there.
Oh, that looks like a servicing nightmare.
This is the intake coming to the turbo there. Run a 45 mil restrictor on the turbo. Rules, no fun.
Through here,
through here.
All the way through here into
All the way
that
down
huge
there.
collector, down into there, into that tiny little restrictor. Look at that little restrictor in there. It's so cute. Into the turbo.
So
And then boom.
Brings it all back around, back through the intercooler up here. They've even got that thing laying right down.
And then the intercoolers, you got kind of like a V-mount style.
Biggest thing we talk about aero, right? You just have to get the air out from under the hood.
So run us through the specs on the engine. What is it? How much power does it make? How does it do it?
This is the craziest part about these things in my eyes. It's a 2-liter. We're running right around 50 pounds of boost in these things.
50?
50. Before the restrictor, these things are making up around 1,000 horsepower. We're racing with somewhere between 600 and 650. I can't get
It's like diesel boost levels right there.
It's
That's wild.
ridiculous.
Very cool. All right, let's put this thing on the lift, because I think what makes this thing super cool is the all-wheel drive setup in here. So
Absolutely. What's the plan here?
Let's
How do you want to?
suspension first. We'll get from right here.
Got a new deal with Penske this year. They're helping us develop the shock absorbers, and God, what a change that's been. And the amount of stuff you can hit with these, like these lower control arms, the subframes and everything. We tried to take a Sawzall to one of these last year, and it basically just said piss off and made the blade go completely dull.
Look at the size of those Heims. I mean, this is almost trophy truck size stuff. It's definitely pre-runner size. Like, that's big.
So one of the coolest parts about these things is we always talk about how fast they accelerate.
Yep.
One of the other cool parts is how fast you can go into a corner and how fast they stop. You can see the size of the brakes on it. These things stop you in a hurry.
13s?
Well, it's a 17-inch wheel and they just fit inside.
Like a 12.7 or something like that? Yeah, they look big. What is that running off the crank?
Power steering pump on the bottom end there. The biggest thing they try and do in these things is get all your weight as low as possible.
So instead of running it off the belt, it just ran off the back of the crank.
Yeah.
All the little part numbers that say like RX, blah, 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 blah. Like, I love that because everything was made for this vehicle.
Literally this entire car, every piece, every part on it's purpose built for Rallycross. We talk about the aero standpoint, and there's so much to do with the aero on top of the car, but most people don't know how much it means underneath. And if you look at this, it's just like pretty much a big pan, right? Like everything is sealed off. And the more we can have that sealed off, it's just sucking this thing to the racetrack.
So let's talk about the drivetrain in here.
We got a SADEV 6-speed gearbox. We run the Eneos 75 140 gear oil in that thing, and thank God it's got good protection because we beat this thing through the gears. It's like every week when this thing comes apart, I'm just kind of gritting my teeth. It's like that thing's got to be beat up. But
well, you were saying before, what, 75 or so shifts?
Exactly. There was one race last year, 2 years ago, there was like 76 shifts in one lap. And then you go under here, we got the exhaust system coming through here, the drive shafts. This is a center disconnect. So basically what this is a clutch. So when I pull the handbrake, it activates the rear brakes and this clutch, so it disconnects the front
Otherwise,
tires
you'd be
from the
locking
back.
up all four.
And that's how we get to change directions in a hurry. The exhaust system, completely built out of Inconel. We're running exhaust temps up to like 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit in these things. Lots of the pieces on it are 3D printed with Inconel, which is pretty amazing. Like the manifolds and everything are 3D printed.
I like that this even has it's like says
it's even got its own
Rallycross straight pipe, RC number. Wow. And then a bunch more body cladding under here.
So we got a front diff and a rear diff. Up under this rear subframe is the rear diff, and everything's adjustable. So we got accel ramps, decel ramps, we've got preload we can play with, and basically what that does is that controls how fast both tires lock in together, how fast you want to apply the traction to the ground. And it's all a balance, right? Because everyone's like, oh, well, you just need the most traction all the time. Well, that's not always true because you got to get around the corner and you got to have your average corner speed up as high as possible.
Sweet. So on the rear suspension, similar setup, huh? It's a kind of a dual.
Upper lower control arm there, different. These are all bolt-in slugs, slide-in slugs, so you can change all your positioning.
Sweet. Anything we miss?
I don't think so. You have to protect these things quite a bit underneath, so there's not. We keep as much out of under here as possible.
Yeah, usually when we put the car up on the lift is when you get to see everything. You guys got it all really nicely hidden under here. Well, sir, thank you very much.
Great seeing you. Thanks for having us.
Welcome to the team, and yeah, try to win somewhere this year. We'd appreciate that. So
we'll make it happen.
I know you got a few podiums under your belt already and a few wins, so we'll see a couple more. By the way, did you see your new hat?
Got me a new hat?
Yeah, we made you a new hat.
It's even got our paint scheme built into that.
Boom, there you go.
Yeah.
It's kind of official now, you get your own hat.